Hello everybody, welcome to the track on AI and tech and on digital solutions. And can I welcome here on stage the first panel for the first session of this series of three. So please sit down, and I join you in a minute after a very, very brief introduction. So the first part of this series of sessions is on artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is very hot now. When you're talking digitalization in healthcare, artificial intelligence, AI is part of it. And like Jack mentioned yesterday when we prepared this session, it is a hype. And what characterizes a hype is that you have advocates for it that think that and that feel that AI is going to solve all our problems. On the other hand, you have also non-believers who say, AI is not going to help us, AI can never do what human beings can do. And there is some fear also around AI, and you have seen that here in the US, where radiologists, and I think even the Society for Radiologists took a stance there that say, hey, AI is going to take away the work of doctors, which is probably not going to be the case. Still, AI is top of mind for healthcare leaders. And we showed this again in the Future Health Index, which is a publication we do every year from Philips, a survey across the world on all these digital solutions. And the last one we did was among healthcare leaders. And all these healthcare leaders, head of departments, CIOs, CEOs, they feel that they should engage in AI. And where they were thinking about AI as a tool for workflow improvement a few years ago, they start now investing and thinking of AI as clinical decision support. So that is going to be the topic of today, how AI will play a role in healthcare in the future and how it can improve health outcomes. Now let me welcome the panel here. Let me start with Jack Lewin. Jack Lewin is the chairman of the National Coalition of Healthcare and the principal and founder of Lewin and Associates. And what is very important, I looked up his CV, is that he was once a leader, the CEO of the American College of Cardiology.
Yes.
And when he was there, he was leading that organization, they came up with the NCDR, which is the National Cardiovascular Data Registry, which is still very, very actual now. Next to him, we have Itai Dayan, and Itai Dayan is the co-founder and chief executive of Rhino Health. And Rhino Health is a very inspiring platform that makes it possible for AI architects to develop AI tools that they can then bring to the market later on. And finally, we have on the screen, joining us remotely from Maastricht, Leonard Wie, who is an assistant professor in clinical data science at Maastricht University. Welcome, Dr. Wie, on the screen there. So let me start with the first question to you, Jack. To what extent do you think that AI, a new AI technology, is being maybe overvalued in healthcare? And then we get the discussion going.
Yeah. Well, I've seen many instances where it has been overvalued, where, where in fact it's only as good as the data that's entered in and the programming that goes along with that. And so, there's a lot of hype with AI out there today. And so, to some extent, you could say advanced analytics is AI. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, there really are some amazing things happening. And so, what I say to physician colleagues who say, I don't want to have anything to do with that, I wouldn't touch it, is that I guess that's okay for now, but 5 years from now, you're going to be an obsolete clinician because we're moving in some great places. I am a senior advisor to a company called Artria, developed by radiologists, cardiologists in Australia, and now spreading into Europe, and it's coming to the US. The FDA is going through it. The technology, it uses AI to evaluate a coronary CT angiography which can be 256 slices or more, and does it in 10 minutes. And when you compare the results to a radiologist or a cardiologist, it's amazingly good, and it's getting better all the time. The FDA is a little bit reluctant to move in this kind of a direction because they think it's sort of like replacing humans. The reality is the cardiologist who then goes in to do the procedure following this study has so much more information than he or she would have had. At the same time, the emergency department doctor who's looking at somebody with some kind of chest pain symptoms has an amazing ability to know that the patient's going to be okay if he sends or she sends the patient home. So it's an amazing technology. And I can talk about several other companies for which I'm involved where this AI is really producing amazing results and better clinical outcomes.
That is what I would like to go at, because you talk about doctors having more information at hand when they are doing the procedure. I can understand that, being a doctor myself, having all the info to treat your patients better. But do you have data that it influences the outcome of patients also?
Well, this data is being collected right now, but we have, those of us who have been connected to it see that it really is producing better results. First of all, the emergency doctor who's there looking at the patient is waiting hours for results from that kind of a study. And this is a 10-minute turnaround time. Mm-hmm. So that's one big clinical improvement. For the patient, just to have the knowledge that, something's get resolved fast, that's an improved outcome, obviously, that we talk about here. But on the other hand, invasive angiography it's fairly safe, but it's not completely safe, right? So here's a technology that provides, for the patient, a much better and quicker approach to understanding whether or not they need to have a cardiac procedure, or they can rest assured that it's just a gastric reflux or something. So I think it's really clear there. I'm working with a company called Privis Health that uses AI to track with nurses working virtually in their homes, actually, thousands of patients across the United States with a lot of chronic conditions and risky kinds of medical problems. And this program can use remote monitoring devices and even systems in the house to know if the patient's getting up, getting out of bed, if they've fallen, if their vital signs have changed. And these nurses use algorithms that tell them who needs help the most, wherever they are, and they can send some help to the patient, or get the physician or the nurse to get there to prevent the patient from deteriorating further. And the algorithms get better and better and better, and as time goes on, because you see the situation where you went and didn't, and it wasn't really that serious. So I think that we're learning and we're doing things with this technology, and I could give you 10 more examples. But you just have to make sure that we're doing fail-safe checks to know that the outcomes really are improved.
I think, Jack, you painted a very, very rosy picture, and I hope that will be the reality in the future. We will talk about a little bit of the worries that people might have later on. I'm going to play a little bit devil's advocate.
Yeah.
But let's first go to Itai. You know a lot about AI and all the different tools that are developed on your platform. What is holding us back to bring these AI tools to the real world?
So first of all, clinical AI is actually quite abundant today, definitely in the United States, and some physician surveys estimate north to 30% of radiologists use some form of AI in decision support while in the clinical practice. So I think AI is already pretty much abundant. I think after the first wave of clinical AI solutions, which many of them have actually focused, while perhaps having the title of decision support, have been more focused on clinical workflow operations in terms of who do you see first, who do you tend to first, rather than actual supplementing the physician with decisions that they could not have made otherwise. Even some of the solutions that Jack brought up, some of them are AI, and it's kind of like the way people see AI, and some of them are around smarter data gathering. which is
Yes.
a huge impact, perhaps bigger than AI in many cases, but is not AI. I think today we're at a crossroads in which if you can call medical AI an industry, in America and elsewhere, there is a need of proof of value. And much of that proof of value, as I think, Jan, you hit the nail on the head, is related to outcomes, to proof of an improvement of outcomes. Not outside AI and digital innovation, there is an abundance of new devices, new drugs, new reimbursement requests, and many people who saw AI in the past as a cost reduction mechanism, perhaps, or as a way to make the healthcare industry more efficient, and are actually saying that the cost of delivering AI to market is still fairly high. The lack of common platforms and the big difficulties around integrating with different IT systems have not fully been solved yet. And I would maybe take a 5-second self-serving break here to say that one of the focuses of my company is creating these bridges using privacy-preserving edge compute. And so allowing data to stay within the data custodian's reach rather than having to centralize or share data for anything that involves outcome transparency, evaluation of effectiveness of tools, et cetera, et cetera. In the United States, it's unlikely that without taking this next step of proving an improvement of outcomes, that AI will become reimbursed at a larger scale. Even the few examples of reimbursed AI today are related to experimental programs, not an actual reimbursement code. And without that, the horde of innovative AI companies today will not be able to continue thriving and growing. I think in terms of creating this outcome transparency, it's a multifaceted issue. Part of that is a problem of defining what are outcomes, which is a thing where ICHOM has taken the world's leadership position on and building things around science and around data analysis, but also around consensus, which is by itself a very big thing. The second phase here is creating different stakeholder alignments. While today America leads the world in terms of medical innovation, but does not always lead the world in terms of aligning stakeholders' incentives to make healthcare system improvements. And that's a big task. And there is still a level of technology that's needed in order to reduce the barriers of doing outcome sharing, outcome even benchmarking at times, and getting more into understanding behind the black box of AI as one, but also the black box of how AI influences clinical care. If we kind of look today at and maybe a last facet of the regulation, today AI devices, called software as a medical device, SAMD, is still regulated to a large extent the same way as urinary catheters are regulated. And the idea of taking a certain device, validating it, and taking it to market with a minimal post-market surveillance is just not working out with AI and may by itself become a significant headwind.
I would like to make the segue to Dr. Wee in a minute, but you're really the tech guy. You know everything about AI tools that are developed on your platform. You will probably agree with me that there are so many different AI tools that it will become a challenge later on to connect all these point solutions in the health journey of a patient. So I would like to ask Dr. Wee how we can solve that problem and see if we can bring some order, some comfort into the whole AI world by using FAIR principles. And maybe you can start explaining what you understand as FAIR principles and then how we could apply that to the development of AI tools in the future.
Thank you very much, Jan. I'd certainly be happy to try. Thank you for also the invitation. I hope you're all having a really good time in Boston. Yeah, so I think one of the, comfort is a difficult thing to define, right? But let's begin by understanding what fair data is. And in some sense, an anti-definition is what it's not, right? Fair data is actually not a call to make your data open and publicly accessible, et cetera, in some sense, giving up control and governance of your data. That's not what fair data is. Fair, as you say, FAIR, stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. And I'll explore a little bit with you about what that means. But the key take-home message about understanding fair data is not the value of the data point in itself, of which we have vast volumes of, but the key aspect of fair data is to imbue each data with rich, descriptive, symbolic, and unique and unambiguous metadata, right? Data that tells us what this data point is actually talking about, what this data point is actually referring to, and what does it mean, and what context is it supposed to be understood in, right? So that is the crux. The metadata aspect is the crux of fair data. And what this allows us to do, or what the FAIR principles talk about doing, is that leveraging metadata in this way aims to build data sets that are readable, actionable by humans, but also really importantly, especially about what Dr. Diane was talking about moments ago, is that it's also readable and actionable by machine algorithms that assist humans to analyze and process data in some degree of an autonomous way. So the things that Dr. Diane was talking about edge computing, this is all only possible, I believe, if the data is presented in such a way that without the direct supervision of a human operator with domain knowledge, one of these algorithms will be able to make sense of it and find patients that are relevant to the clinical question and try to answer that in an ethical way. Right? So my throwaway line here is that there's going to be three fairs, Jan, right? Fair, as in findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. And I think that's really about talking about imbuing our data with metadata, the contextual intelligence, so that we can valorize that vast, raw, untapped volumes of data in a correct way for the right reason, right? And for the right purpose. Then the other fair, and I think Dr. Diane is going to pick up on this, the other fair is federated AI ready. And this is, I think, very resonant with what he's saying. If we want to preserve privacy by not throwing our governance away, not giving our data sets to each other, then we're going to need machines to run around and find the data sets that we need that are relevant to our clinical question and analyze that for us and tell us what the outcomes are, or tell us what are the case mix parameters that might explain a particular difference in outcome, right? So that's the second fair. The third fair, I believe, FAIR, is following actionable insights responsibly, right? Because with smart metadata, the hope is, or the plan is, by following these good data governance principles, is that we imbue the data sets, the raw data itself, we imbue it and we keep with it the context and the situation and the provenance, right? So that we can actually understand what we are building and what AI algorithms are actually learning when we use that data. And this goes to, I think, a long way towards beginning, not completely solving, but towards beginning to unpack this black box AI problem that we often talk about. So I think, in coming back to the comfort, Jan, right? So I think comfort for an epidemiologist is going to be different from comfort from a patient. But I think part of the comfort that we all agree on is that this disillusionment, this valley of disillusionment that we might presently be in is I think, a symptom of our over-reliance or our over-focus on data, raw data in its raw, untapped state, but not enough focus on metadata, the rich, the descriptive, the syntactic, and the symbolic meaning of what that data is talking about. And that is part of the reason why sometimes we are overreaching with the hype and underreaching with the performance. So in that sense, at least, right? So I feel that this fair data principles in its various guises really goes a long way towards asking us to think about a roadmap of making use and valorizing patients' data in a responsible way using AI.
So talking about this roadmap, maybe let me take a position for the sake of the argument. If I say that AI will never for the foreseeable future, will never be an autonomous tool that we will use to help patients and to increase their outcome. It will always be a combination between a human being that is enabled by an AI technology to do a better job. Would that statement resonate with you, or do you think I'm completely
Well, I could
out
take
of
that for a
whack?
second. You know, we've all, you know, seen the Starship Enterprise, you know, and there's one doctor and one nurse, thousands of people on the ship, but they have some amazing technology, right? And so I guess the role at that point, no need for specialty and subspecialty doctors anymore. You just have this amazing, brilliant technology. But why then the doctor and the nurse? Because something human needs to be there with the patient. And because there's something called intuition that we have to sometimes just, something tells us, our own metadata, if you will, that something's not right. And so the importance of having this as a tool to help us, I think, is really correct. But we also have to be impressed by how smart the tool can be.
Okay. Itai, what's you're a big believer in it.
Each of us has his own internal world of association. So mine is perhaps Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, in which Charlie's father gets laid off because they replaced his role in putting on the lids on toothpastes. But then he regains a job in fixing the machine that had replaced him. So I'd say that saying that autonomous AI will never happen, I think that's, autonomous AI already works in some ways. Nobody investigates to every blood smear in order to count the number of red blood cells. And already many diagnostics that are algorithmically driven are already deployed in the clinic. Some of them are
Electrocardiogram.
Yeah,
Electrocardiogram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in many countries outside of the US where there's less resources, I'd say that the reliance on some of these tools as a first diagnostic in a diagnostic pathway is probably even higher. And so I think saying that there won't be any autonomous AI solutions is probably even perhaps a low likelihood, a very low likelihood. I think that in terms of saying that a closed circuit in which an AI diagnoses you and then operates on you is much more like in the Star Trek, perhaps, perhaps realm. But I think there's definitely going to be many decisions made, especially in areas where like surveying large populations of patients and deciding where to drill down on. Where one of the tools developed on our platform, for example, has been a solution that works in the background and diagnoses brain aneurysms that have previously not been diagnosed using a CT angio. So you could already say that by that accord, the patient would be reviewed or not reviewed only solely based on the AI's review. If the AI deems you as a negative, you won't be reviewed.
Mm-hmm. But you could even you could imagine an AI application on your cell phone that diagnoses a disease, for example, a skin disease, immediately suggests you what the treatment will be, not being surgical, because then a human being need to handle the knife, but maybe a drug. Refers you to the pharmacy, you get the drug, you take the drug, you treat yourself. That's theoretically possible. Do you see that coming?
It depends on the value and the risk, the value ratio and the risk. There's some cases in which I think that could definitely happen. There's already digital health companies that allow you to call it like healthcare as a product. You buy a diagnostic, you send it for UPS or FedEx, you receive a result. One physician over a stream of tens of thousands of users takes a look at the, some of the results, prescribes something, and you use a and you use a therapeutic. That already does happen. Yeah. I think some of the lines of thought that we think about are perhaps a patient going into the hospital and is diagnosed for having a myocardial infarction by AI without a human in the loop. And I think we're very far away from something like that happening.
I have a follow-up question for you, but I would like to go first to Dr. Wee to see what his reaction would be on my statement.
Yeah. So what a great conversation. I think resonating with many things amongst many of us, right? But I think this is a great question, Jan, and I want to put the disclaimer that I'm a I'm working in big data and AI reluctantly, right? But I find it very useful. So let that be a message for whatever that means. I think you earlier already, maybe implicitly, maybe explicitly, differentiated between two uses of AI, right? There's the AI that is automation and efficiency improving. And I believe that is already autonomously happening. It's generating our image scans for us, right? If I run a patient through an MRI scanner from Philips, let's say, right? There's already an AI in the box inside that scanner actually doing the work of reconstructing an MRI sequence for me, which is just a noisy bunch of radio signals, but is reconstructing this beautiful internal view of the anatomy for me. And nobody is fighting back against the autonomy or questioning about the validity of that AI, because it's mainly related to saving time and creating efficiency, right? And also doing a job that no human can possibly do. The other category of AI that I hear you talking about, and also with the other panelists, is a degree of AI that kind of does a diagnostic or prognostic or a predictive or a treatment recommendation path. Now there, I think I would like to offer a different view, is that in my sphere of conduct, my sphere of activity, we are strong believers in something called shared decision-making and the use of patient-reported outcomes and perhaps estimation or prediction of patient-reported outcomes as a consequence of treatment as a basis of having a collaborative, consultative, equitable, and equal distribution of expertise between the doctor, who's the expert in the clinical stuff, and the patient who's an expert in themselves. And that paradigm of shared decision-making, I think, is very, very powerful because, one, it retains the central, most vital quality in any kind of patient care relationship, which is the relationship of trust between a doctor and their patient. And two, this is not just wishful thinking and pull some, airy-fairy suggestions out of the air. The treatment options that you discussed in shared decision-making have to be ethically, medically, and evidence-based, right? And the way you choose between option A or option B is very much grounded in what we think are the different trade-offs between, the benefits of extensive surgery, let's say, for example, versus what it will cost you in terms of quality of life, right? So I think that there are two domains there that you're really talking about, right, Jans? That the automation, which is already kind of autonomously happening, and none of us have even noticed it, and we just accept it. But what we're really struggling with at the moment now is the degree of autonomy and intervention of a machine algorithm into choosing our treatments for us. But I like to suggest that there is actually, quite a lot of space in that spectrum. It's not doctor choosing, it's not patient choosing, it's not machine choosing, but perhaps we can think of a triple intelligence paradigm where all three intelligences equally collaborate in making a mutually beneficial decision for each other. And to me, that's shared decision making.
Yeah, thank you. That brings me to the follow-up question. Where will the responsibility be? And where will the litigation be? If you're going to use artificial intelligence in order to make a better diagnosis, you are, as a doctor, you're just a human being, and you're going to be less critical probably on the long run, and then you're going to make the wrong diagnosis. How is litigation going to work there, Jack?
I think the parent organization for which everybody's working is the most liable here. Whoever says we're purchasing and using the AI, rather than the clinicians who are somehow engaged with it. But obviously, in terms of litigation and medical litigation in America, every deep pocket will be covered, and no one will escape. But I think ultimately the risk will go to the parent organization, the hospital system that is using this technology. It's like the question with autonomous driving. Do we think that we're going to be sitting in a car that is truly driving itself, and we have nothing to do except read our book? And is it going to be put, as safe as we want it to be? And if the accident occurs, is it the auto manufacturer who is responsible there, or who's responsible? I think, but everybody involved is going to be touched by at least the American legal system.
But Itai, what is your feel on it? Will it be? Can we envision a new world where also the producers, the companies that are bringing these AI to the market, will be partially responsible for wrong diagnosis and wrong treatments that follow up on the use of these tools?
I think that all goes back into the question of regulation. Today, the way different products are cleared in the market also reflects the intended use of them. If you're using a product in a way that's unintended, you will bear the consequences. I think in order for providers to agree to take more of that liability upon themselves, they will need to see outcomes in a cost-benefit ratio for making these decisions, which takes us back to the first question about outcomes, which today are uncertain. I'd actually, maybe as a small aside, we talk a lot about whether AI will be autonomous or not, and whether it will be shared decision-making or sole decision-making. The tools today to evaluate whether AI works or doesn't work are not there. Meaning today manufacturers are responsible for ascertaining the quality of their solutions, and it is far from every decision-making that is scrutinized. Meaning, kind of when you think today about like most of the radiology workflow, which is the one that has been disrupted the most by AI, an AI algorithm makes a decision and triages the case based on that decision. Does the physician ultimately know if the AI was right or wrong? They often do. Does the manufacturer know whether the AI was wrong or right? Usually not. Especially in the edge cases in which the disagreement between the AI and the physician and the decision is not straightforward. One of the problems you face then is that in order to know whether the patient actually had a stroke or didn't have a stroke, for example, or when an infarction or any other situation, may not become completely obvious until a few days have passed. And because the way where AI works today on unimodal data, meaning only one data modality, there is no way to contrast the different results coming from different clinical production systems in order to diagnose the failure cases. And I think that until we get into a step change with that regard, that you can really tell what the true accuracy of a solution is, what the true failure rate of a solution is, I don't think there will be many physicians who will dare take AI towards more autonomous decision-making or rely more deeply on AI for decision-making. That will become even the precursor for this discussion in a certain way.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's go to the audience, because I cannot imagine that there are no questions in the audience for these distinguished people here on stage.
There's one back there.
Yes.
Hi, thank you. I have two comments. Perhaps I'm inspired by what I heard. One, I'm going to speak. I'm not here with my company, but I'll speak to my company. And I'll speak to say that I worked on a project recently with what we call 5 Pure Hearts, where a man from India who's a technical genius who created a product that supports the elderly in China and Singapore to live with confidence using technology. A man in London who was frustrated with his wife's journey of cancer, who is a retail innovator for Tata Corporation. A man in Netherlands who is a professor who speaks to the fact that to err is human. And a man who owns micro hotels in London got together, and myself, I'm a nurse, an engineer, I'm everything and anything and creative, and we got together and drew a hyper-personalized journey of a person with dementia. And we thought of what is the day, the minute, the moment, the nanosecond of that journey. We talked about it, just took a few hours, we sketched it out. We started with nutrition. We had a team in Netherlands and India, then design, everything around nutrition. And then we created everything from a metaverse perspective of the future, of what does it mean if you don't have money and you don't have insurance and all you have is human need, and you have technology. How can you support and sustain the top quality of life every minute of every day, every nanosecond with a human operator? and we're putting it out in experiment right now. And it's a beautiful concept when you look at things that way and you put the black box in there, because then you got little mini drones flying around, you're predicting the fall, you're predicting the disease, you've got the clinician involved, you've got the family involved, you're getting dinner with the grandchildren to improve their quality of mood. If they're sitting on the couch too long, you're getting them out to the garden. You're getting all of those little things that we don't think about, that we take for granted when we're healthy, done. So like the future's here, right around the corner, if we just shift and start thinking differently. But we've got to be we've got to put the patient, we've got to stop calling them the patient. We've got to put that person central and think of their basic fundamental human needs. And we're so fragmented. So that's my first comment, is we can't go anywhere till we're there, in my opinion, and my observation. I work clinically 1 day a week with pediatric genomically impaired kids. It's a mess. I've been a nurse for a long time. It's an absolute scary place right now. The second story is how scary it is. An algorithm somewhere somehow does COVID surveillance and creates and replaces infectious disease specialists today by running algorithms and deciding who is at high risk for COVID hospitalization and recommends globulin, intravenous, or therapy, pharmaceutical therapy, based on an algorithm that's AI, that's running off of COVID CDC surveillance data, where you just go into a hospital, get an intravenous for 45 minutes, or you take 7 to 10 days of medication. It's being driven by AI. There's one physician connected to a call center who is aligned to a call center, and literally you drive through a CVS, you do a self-administered test, it's not a PCR. When it's positive, you call an 800 phone number, and then tell you won the lottery, you should go to the hospital, go to the IV clinic, and get an intravenous infusion. And they literally, at no cost whatsoever, do the intravenous infusion. And it's like, I was like, they're like selling it to me like I won the lottery. And I said, excuse me, but you're talking to me like I won the lottery. You're telling me that the reason why you want to give me globulin is because my BMI increased. Are you kidding me? Like, tell me more, give me a doctor. Please give me a doctor. We have to be careful
I hate to interrupt your story, but I feel that you're referring to something that patients have on their minds. What is, if all my data are used for AI tools, how do we deal with security, with privacy, with the patient interests themselves? Can the panel react on this, please? Maybe taking in the stories that the lady in the back.
How do we deal with CRM call centers how do we deal with the call center algorithm? How do we deal with the fact that the algorithms, the AI and the specialists, are connecting to call centers that are connecting to algorithms that preclude you from ever seeing a clinician today? What you talk about.
I think we have to go back to what this meeting is about, which is we need to know what the outcomes are of this complexity. And if we're tracking truly what the outcomes are with the complexity, then we'll see the errors where they are, and we'll start to correct them, and we'll understand where we need the human intervention. So, I mean, we have to go back to what this meeting is about. We have to see better outcomes with all this complexity, or we're heading in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I have to say, Jack, this reminds me of a story you told us in the preparation meeting, which I loved a lot, about an insurance company that introduced an algorithm that randomly denied every nth claim.
That's right.
And so the tyranny of making algorithmic decisions on human life is not a novelty.
No.
And even if people who are directed to the emergency department, even if without need, and that causes the medical staff to not tend to other patients who are at true need, that by itself is also a shame. So I'm not sure if I would direct all my fury towards algorithmic decision-making, because that is already upon us.
Yeah.
And I would say that as my esteemed colleagues from around the world and digital media or here have said, the transparency around outcomes, around the impact of these decisions on human lives, that is the real challenge. Not to decide that only humans can make decisions about humans, because that ship has sailed a very long time ago.
Yeah. Another question from the audience, maybe. Yes, please.
Yes, Dedise is from the Maastad Hospital, the Netherlands. I had a question. First of all, thank you very much for this inspiring panel discussion. I was pretty much triggered by the role of AI or tech within the shared decision making. And I was wondering if you could share your vision or your thoughts on how this relates to the patient-reported outcomes that we measure, and how do you see its localization within the care path of the patients or truly at the outpatient clinic? Maybe you could share your thoughts about it. I'm very curious.
And who do you want to answer this question?
Any of you.
Any of us. Let's start with Dr. Wie from the same city in the Netherlands.
Yes, hi. Yeah, thank you for that question, and thank you for. I hope it was triggering you in a positive and interesting and inspiring way. I think you've touched on a really new topic. So a small disclaimer here is that I'm involved in a number of research grants going on at the moment that are specifically looking at not just the technical, but also the legal and the ethical and the philosophical and the social aspects of what does it mean when we have artificial intelligence of some form or another. It could be a very, very simplistic model. Some people might interpret that as some form of artificial intelligence, or it could actually be quite highly nonlinear and complex. But in any case, the crux of it is that there is going to be some mechanistic process that is going to be part of the patient's and the doctor's conversation. Now, what we imagine at the patient and doctor's conversation at the moment is that there is actually no machinery involved. Well, that's partly right, and that's partly not true either. Because what we see in shared decision-making at the moment is that the crux is I'm negotiating as two equal partners between the trade-offs of risk and benefit between treatment option A and treatment option B, right? But what's informing that trade-off? What's informing that trade-off is, for example, the risk that there might be post-surgical complications if you undergo surgery. And what do you get if you go through surgery is, well, maybe you have a higher chance of keeping that disease under control. So therein lies that trade-off, and where is that information coming from? It could come from clinical trials, it could come from retrospective studies. So in some sense, we are data-driven already in that sense of decision-making, right? And what the AI is trying to introduce, perhaps, or at least my attempt at gentle introduction of it, is not for the AI to over-dominate the process, but to really take a subservient role to say, maybe I can help clarify this balance, this trade-off of risks and benefits associated with procedure A versus procedure B, and present this in an open, transparent, and as much as I can achieve, ethical way, for the doctor and the patient to jointly make a consensus decision about what is in both of their best interests to do, right? So the short version is it's a really new topic, right? Shared decision-making has been around for some time, as you probably are well aware of. The idea of what role does data and machine-assisted processing of data should have a role in shared decision-making is a very interesting, very exciting question that we are exploring, and we hope that people like you will be willing to explore that with us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wie, and thank you also very much to the audience for the questions and the remarks. The screen here has slowly turned from orange into red, so rests me only to thank the panel here and thank you for your engaging discussions. Thank you.